Good morning and welcome to another great edition of Money Truth Moments with our very own money whisperer, our very own expert, Judy Kopenbarger. How are you, Judy?
Oh, I am so happy to be here. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Hey, I'm very excited about today's show because we're doing part two of financial planning for our future generations. So I want to make sure that we get started. We don't run out of time. Last week we covered a lot. So I wanted to see if you can, right out of the gate, just maybe start with reminding us a little bit of part one. And if you didn't see part one, please make sure that you go back to the previous show from last week and catch up a little bit on it.
Absolutely. Our conversation is about generational wealth. How do you make sure that everything that you're working for isn't going to poof, legal term, right?
Yes.
Isn't going to poof in the next generation? How do we prepare them? How do we bring some financial literacy to the next generation and to their children, our grandchildren, right? How do we get them ready so they're not entitled or they don't make mistakes? How can we help them learn from the mistakes that we've made and the skills that we put together around money? How do we do that? And then we're going to empower them and equip them, but then we also want to give them a nest egg, right? We want to give them something to start with. And in our family, we have 5 children. So in our family, I was sharing in this last episode that we really want them to not only know how to do it, but believe that they can do it and give them something to start on. So our ceiling becomes their floor, our educational foundation, our financial foundation, the charitable heart that we have as a family, to try to make a difference in the world and not just live in a big house up on the top of the hill somewhere, but actually make a difference in our communities and with people that are around us, help people that need it, and have an impact on the globe. And so that's kind of what we're doing in our family, and that's what I get to do with families all over the country. And it is such a joy to watch them prepare the next generations, as we start with little kids, but even teenagers, young adults, as they're, going through those college years and starting their families, making sure that they have the skill sets to be able to take what they're going to be receiving at some point as an inheritance and take that to the next level. It's awesome.
Yeah, and you talked about also just how to be prepared. This is something that you touched on the last show as well too. But let's also now in this new question I have for you. It's regarding strategies, right?
Mhm.
What kind of strategies can we put in place to protect family wealth, right, from potential like future economic downturns? I mean, we've all experienced it, right? We've all seen when things crash, when things don't go well, when you lose your job and so forth.
Yeah.
But you've always had great wisdom, and I want you to take a moment to share with that. How do we prepare for something like that?
Well, the first thing is to be really clear in the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we trying to grow wealth? Why are we trying to make sure that it is sustainable for the next generations? And that just comes down to our purpose, our why, our mission statement. So, what we did with our families and what I do with many now is we create a mission statement. Like, what is this family about? Why do we exist? Why do we work together? And why do we take action the way that we do? And you can even create a family constitution. This is what we're about. This is what we're building. This is something sustainable, the meaning and the purpose, sustainable for our family as it grows. And you add branches. This year we're adding a couple of branches. We're having our first grandchild. We're also having one of our children get married. So we're adding branches to
Congrats!
the tree. Yeah.
Congratulations!
Thank you. It's going to be a great year. So, as we add branches to the tree, we bring the new people into the meaning of our family, the purpose of the family. And when our kids were little, we always had a mission statement. And we all agreed to it. Here's what we're about. We're about having fun. We're about education. We're about celebrating benchmarks. We're about making a difference and not just accumulating. We're about sharing, what we do have and inspiring other people to take on some of these values and share with other people and just kind of spread the love. So we have all these things that we all have signed on to, which are sustainable. So even like you said, things crash, you lose your job, you end up moving, health issues happen, life doesn't always go exactly the way we plan. We all know that if we are veterans at life like you and I. Things happen. And sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's in other areas of life. But when it happens, it's easy to get off track, off course. And if you have that why, that big purpose, what we're here for, it's so easy to get back on track, right, this is the way we're going. This is what we're trying to accomplish here as a family. So that's all I have to say about that. I just think it's exciting to help people see that. We do it in business. I'm going to build this business. We're going to make this kind of profit. We're going to make this a widget that is going to change the world. It's going to help people. People will buy my product or consume my product or my services, right? We do it in business all the time. We do it as a government all the time. Here's what we set out to do. Here's our mission, and then we accomplish the mission. Why don't more families do that? Right? Why
Yeah,
don't they?
right, right.
I guess it just wasn't modeled. If you look back at the generations before us, the greatest generation and all this, everybody was surviving. People came off the farms or they immigrated, and they're just like doing what they have to do to get through the end of the day, raise their families and try to keep them all from, dying, keep all the kids from
Right.
getting hit in the street or whatever. And we're just trying to get through life, like survive. But now most of us pretty much affluent, right? Most of the folks in this country, we live really well. So now we have more time. We have more dispensable cash to actually build something. And so I think this generation, and probably the one even before us, is able to do that a little bit. There's free time. We've got dishwashers now. We have washing machines. We're not like doing chores all day long and just trying to keep our kids fed. We have other things that we can do. And so that goes into this. Now, what do we do with that, with those resources and that time? What are we going to build for the next generations? So that's what we talked about a little bit in the last episode, and what I'd like to just kind of springboard into our next discussion with you.
Yeah, and you touched on something very important. So we've talked about money, we talk about making money, sometimes losing money, but you also mentioned sharing the love, right? That key word, share,
Yeah.
right? So as our families, as a family, how do we incorporate like philanthropy? How do we deal with social responsibility to, in part of financial planning? Because that's also very important that you talked about as well.
Yeah. Well, it's just determining what your values are. What are the causes that you care about? Is it helping everybody, have enough food to eat? Because in a lot of the places in the world, and even in our country, there are places, people that don't have enough to eat. Is it about that? Is it about animals? Do you love animals? You have a passion for them and you want to rescue them and save them and make sure that they have what they need? Has your life been touched by some disease or condition? Someone in your family or you have gone through some cancer or something, and you want to make sure. Alzheimer's is a big one. There's all these causes that we care about. Usually when it touches your family, it's like, oh yeah, we need more money to research that. And then you get your why. And sometimes it comes out of a tough time or a tough circumstance. It could be anything. It could be making sure that everybody has an education or everybody gets to play sports. And you have a community where maybe they can't afford cleats and they can't afford soccer balls. And so now you can sponsor a league, so everybody gets to play, even if they don't have the means. So whatever it is, it's just integrating that into your life. And I think when you share stories about the help that you've been able to bring people and your community and causes that you care about, that inspires other people to look around and say, I could do that. I could at least go on Saturday morning and read to the kids at the library that just are learning how to read. I could do something, even if I don't have a lot of money or a big van to haul people around. I can do something. And so I love it when people inspire other people to be doing something that's about more than just themselves, not just accumulating money, but actually having an impact with the time and the money and the resources that you have.
No, and that's great. And I think also part of this is, since you've been talking about this from last week, this is all built. It's like this little building block, right? You have your foundation, you keep going higher and higher with different things too. I think one of the key things that we tend to forget because we either put it off or nobody's talked to us about it is, what role does like estate planning play in the financial planning for future generations?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's about conservation. So you earn all this, you accumulate all this, and then the taxes kick in, or you end up probating assets, and that's just going through the court process, which is very costly and time consuming. And so you end up, let's say you have $5 million to leave your kids, and now there's 4 because of the cost of the process. So a good estate plan will help you avoid taxes that you don't need to pay, make them optional, right? Costs, the cost of attorneys, the cost of the court processes, all of that. So a good estate plan will do that. It'll also help you avoid costs when there's not a death, but an incapacity. So how does somebody deal with your stuff if you're incapable at some point, whether it's temporary or permanent, whether it's physical or mental? That happens in life. And if it happens to you, what's the cost to be able to handle your business, handle your affairs while you're still living? A good estate plan will handle all of those contingencies and make sure that you don't spend money trying to take care of something that could have been avoided. All those costs could have been avoided.
Yeah. Let me ask you also. So when we talk about families, right? There's the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? We all have them. We all deal with them. We
You don't
all,
have a
have
perfect family, Carlos.
yeah, exactly, right. We all have to deal with something or someone at some point or
Someone, it's
another.
the people in the
Yeah,
family. Yeah.
exactly, right. But talk about in your experience, like I know you've experienced a lot with being kind of a mediator, if you will, with families. I think for folks that are reaching out to you for different help. What do you recommend, or how do you recommend families address the potential for conflict when you're creating this multi-generational financial plan? Because everybody has an opinion, right? You got too many cooks in the kitchen, and you know what happens with that too.
Oh, it's so true. And we all have different values, different backgrounds. And then you get the in-laws and the outlaws in, and there's all that
Mhm.
influence. And we're all different. We all have different ways of observing things, different experiences that we've had that we bring to the table. We always take our experiences in life and put it in our future. The past comes to our future, and then that's how we handle things. So I always have a powwow, when we're sitting around the conference table with a family, either there's someone going through a hard time, an incapacity, or end of life decisions that need to be made, or somebody's passed away. And we have two kinds of meetings. One is where the person who has passed away did a lot of planning and everything is just streamlined, simple. We just connect the dots, right? We follow the instructions. Then we have the meetings where people did not plan. And so family comes in and says, what can I do? What am I out? I've got one of those tomorrow, actually. I'm bringing the whole family in, and it's like, oh, they could have done better with the planning. So here's what we can do now. Those meetings aren't as fun. When the planning wasn't there, those meetings are not as fun because, I try not to talk too much about what could have been. But it's hard not to, if you're looking at several $100,000 in tax we have to pay because they didn't do this thing. Oh, and so the family's like, we're doing it. We're going to do it. We're going to avoid that. But those meetings, happen. And that's part of what I get to do. But the first thing I always do is make sure that we're all in agreement that one of my goals and what I'm going to help them do is I always want to leave a family better than when I found it. Family harmony, marital harmony, for couples. I want to make sure that even if they're still mad about who was the favorite and who didn't get to play with whose ball when they were 4, all of that stuff that comes up, right? In our 40s, it's the stuff at 4, it's the same issues with siblings. And there's all that, well, you were the favorite and they promised you this and they always did, you always picked you, all that stuff. And then sibling rivalry just surfaces again. And usually adults are living away, raising their families, and now they're back shoved in that same conference room again. Here we are. It's like when we shared, the bunk beds as kids, all the same issues. And so I always want to leave a family better than I found it. And I get them to agree that even if we disagree, we're going to work through what needs to happen. You can always, separate if you really can't get along, separate and go your own ways when it's done. But we're going to work together to meet the end result of taking care of this business, right? But you hear about people that fight over stuff, grandma's stuff or dad's stuff or whatever for years. And then the family splits and the cousins that used to play together aren't allowed to go to each other's houses anymore because of all the stories.
Yeah.
I get so sad when I hear families where that has happened. So I always say, we're here to take care of business and do what we have to do in the courts and take care of the law and all the checklists. But it's really about the family and the relationships for me. And most people that work with us, they will agree to that. I mean, that's what we're here to do. We'll still take care of the business, but we really want the family to be better than it was before, if it's possible.
Awesome. Folks, if you're just joining us, please watch the beginning of the show. We are talking part 2 of financial planning for future generations. And if you missed last week, please make sure that you also watch part 1 as well too. And on that note, also, if you're not following Judy, do so at judycooperbarger.today. She's got all of her social media links too, and there's more information that you can get directly from her website. We're talking about great things regarding planning for future generations. So let's talk a little bit about like what tools or investment vehicles do you find most effective for this long-term generational wealth preservation?
Well, there's legal tools and there's financial tools. So legal tools is going tools. It's going to be a durable power of attorney, financial powers of attorney or directives, conservatorship forms, different kinds of trusts that we can use. A lot of people like to say, I need to have a will. I want a will, whatever kind of will it is. There are many kinds. But a will means we are in court. Somebody dies. Now we have to go to court to open the will and then say who gets the stuff, pay all the bills. If anybody owes the estate, collect that and then take care of stuff. But we're in court, which means we're in a probate proceeding. So trust is usually one of the best ways to avoid the probate process. There are other ways to transfer your wealth to the next generations without a trust, but that's usually a really good kind of catch-all for most people. So I would say that's the legal side. On the financial side, if it's about preserving wealth, a lot of the insurance industry products can do that really well. And what you're talking about, I think your question is about the market goes up, down, up, down, up. Now it goes down. Uh-oh. How do we not, while it's down, transfer it to our kids while it's down, right? And poof, that's that poof factor we talked about. How do you avoid that? Insurance products are going to do that. So there are life insurances that can do it. A lot of life insurances have riders. There's so many options. There's offerings every Tuesday. There's so many. Annuity products, which are basically a life insurance with an investment kind of rolled into it. And annuities, there are three kinds. There are fixed, which is going to be like a CD. It's going to have an interest rate and you just, can see exactly 3%, 5%, whatever it is. That would be good right now. And you just have the guarantee of that return. That's a fixed. A variable is going to be basically a portfolio inside of the life insurance. And so it's an investment that you have some kind of guarantees on where it's going to make sure that even if it's down when you die, you'll get at least what you had in there at one point or some kind of a return that's guaranteed. And then there's a kind of a hybrid, which is a fixed indexed kind of investment contract, kind of an annuity. And that you can either turn on income or use it as a gathering vehicle. And what's cool about the insurance products is most of them don't have variable may, but most of them don't have a management fee. So you're not paying every year 2 or 3 or 4% for somebody to pick what's in the portfolio. You can avoid that. If the market goes up, you get that. If the market goes down, a lot of the contracts say, well, you didn't lose anything. We'll just reset the clock for the next anniversary. They're awesome. So those are some things you can do to preserve wealth. I would never recommend that a family put everything into a vehicle that's like death based. Life insurance has a date when it ends, and that's when somebody dies, the annuitant dies. But those are products that you can use to help sustain wealth. So ultimately, when Larry and I are gone, and the second of us dies, now there's a chunk of cash for the next generation to kind of start with. So those are great options for what you don't need during your lifetime.
Great. And speaking of options, we're at the end of the show. And of course, I can only mean one thing. It's our challenge time. So
challenge time. Here's your challenge. I think 3 things today for your challenge. If you're really taking note of this information and you want to kind of increase the probability of success in your financial journey, 3 things to consider doing this week. One is to look at the legal part of your financial work, your plan, what you're doing. The other is to look at the insurance part. And the third one is to look at the big why, right? So the legal part, do you have a will? Does it need to be updated? Would a trust be a better choice for you? Are there other vehicles that you should have in place that you don't? Maybe you did a power of attorney when you went in and had surgery 20 years ago, but you haven't done one since. What would happen if you got knocked on the head and somebody needed to talk to your doctor? Without that paper, it's not going to happen without some court intervention or some formality. So that's something to think about, your legal gaps. The insurance gaps, is there something that you could do legacy wise for your family? We're talking about wealth down the generations. Would it make sense to have some kind of a life insurance or an annuity put in place for your future generations? consider that. I just had a family the other day say they had life insurance. They really don't need it anymore. They're totally self-insured and they're doing really well with their businesses. But when we talked about their options, keep it or 1035 it to something else, or all these options, they decided to keep them and let them coast, but it's going to be for grandkids' education. They don't need the death benefit and their kids are doing fine. But for that to be a legacy for the grandkids to go, grandma and grandpa really valued education. And for us to be able to take classes, maybe beyond college, and do other things. So that's what they're doing. So legal and insurance. The third one is probably the most important challenge that I have for you. And that is to really visit the purpose, the why for your family wealth. Because if the why is big enough, it'll happen. If it's not, it won't be sustainable. So what is your mission statement for your family? What is all the wealth there for? What do you hope 50 years, 100 years from now, your legacy will be doing with all that cash? That's your challenge.
Awesome. Folks, you heard the challenge. If you have any questions, please let us know. And we are at the end of the show. So if you're not following Judy, please do so at judykopenbarger.today. We are here every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. You can always watch the replay on Thursdays at 8 p.m. as well, too. And as always, pleasure learning from you, Judy. Any last parting words?
Make it a great week. You got this.
All right. Until next week, you guys, make sure you tune in and share the stream as well, too. Thank you.